Who's ever heard of Omer's Ventures before? Perfect. I'll keep it short. We're the Ontario Municipal Employee Retirement System. We're the venture fund for the pension fund there. We're an $800 million pension fund, which makes us one of the largest pension funds in Canada. Common misconception is that we're late-stage investors. We're really not. We're all-stage investors. So we invest in anywhere from seed startups all the way up to pre-IPO. So anywhere from $250K all the way up to our largest check we wrote was about $40 million. We're stage agnostic, we're theme agnostic, but our one thing that we really believe in is Canadian entrepreneurs. We're really bullish about Canada, we're really bullish about the talent that comes out of the universities, the talent that comes out of the companies that are succeeding within tech, and if you have a startup, if you want to talk about it, come talk to me after. I'm always open to talk. Data intelligence is really a very hot topic right now. Coming from my IoT background, a few years ago, we were always talking about sensors and how many sensors there were and the number of IP addresses that each sensor was connected to. All these sensors have created so much data over the last few years that now we need machines and artificial intelligence to look through this data and come up with some type of answers, a black box regression analysis of the inputs and how they come up to outputs, and teaching computers to help us answer some of the questions we can't answer. So with that said, let's talk about data intelligence. I want to introduce three of our panelists here. Alyssa Furtado from RateHub.ca, Brandon Kane from Vantage, and Yoav Schwartz from Uberflip. Please welcome them on stage. So why don't we start off with the easy questions? What does your company do, and how do you use data intelligence and data science to get to some answers? And maybe you can use an example of a cool insight you got from using data science. Alyssa, why don't we start with you?
Okay, so I'll get started. So RateHub is at the stage where we're just starting to build out our data intelligence capabilities. And so I'm going to talk more about the reason why it started to be a challenge for us and some of the answers that we want to solve. So when we first got into the space, all of our data and our conversions happened online, and it was really easy to just use Google Analytics to track everything for us. But as our business has increased in complexity, we now have data spread out across a number of different systems. And so one of our first big challenges is to create a system and a dashboard to weave all of our analytics together and start being able to connect our online touch points with our customers to our offline conversions to make better decisions. And one of the other big challenges we need to solve is one of our big businesses is credit card comparisons, and we generate leads for many of the major banks. And so we'll send the banks a customer, but right now we're seeing about 60% of our completed applications by our users being declined. But the banks aren't forthcoming with sharing their underwriting criteria and the decisions and criteria that they use to approve or decline. And so what we need to do on our own end is track inputs like income and credit score and things like that on our consumers, tie those to approvals and declines, and start to internally figure out and take an estimate and guesses at what we think the banks are using to make those underwriting decisions. And so that's a great challenge for us that we can use data intelligence to help us solve.
So my name is Brandon. I'm the co-founder of Vantage. Originally, we were called Vantage Analytics. We dropped the analytics out of our name because no one really understood what that meant. So we see ourselves as kind of basically a growth engine for e-commerce primarily. So we work with a ton of stores that work through platforms like Magento, BigCommerce, and Shopify, and really help them grow and understand their customer behavior, but more from an action point of view. So we help them not only understand what their customers are doing, predicting who's likely to buy and when, but help them execute on all of those strategies to really understand, to help them actually grow. Because a lot of them don't want the analysis. They don't want the analytics. They don't want the insights. They want the action. They want to be able to grow their revenue through the use of all these analytics, but a lot of them don't have the ability to do that in-house. So we take all of their data and really drive the execution of their campaigns. So we do a lot of Facebook and Instagram advertising, very highly targeted to people who are likely to purchase, and also optimize all of those campaigns while they're running. So that's kind of where we see ourselves as we're the user of all of the analytics and insights for them, but the thing that our customers are purchasing from us is the action, the results of what they're doing, and that's kind of where we fit into that whole ecosystem.
Hey everyone, Yoav Schwartz. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Uberflip. We are a content experience platform. So we help marketers in large organizations, large B2B organizations, create content experiences for their blogs, their videos, their white papers for different stages of the buyer journey. So everything from discovery to engagement, lead generation that taps into marketing automation systems, down to their sales team. Really about how to leverage the content that's being produced across the entire organization. So we have a very natural use case for machine learning, natural language processing around content. So we look at data intelligence both internally, how we can leverage it as a company, and also how we can productize it for our customers. So the application of a recommendation engine is pretty obvious there. When our customers are producing content experiences, they're doing so for very specific personas at very specific stages of the buyer journey for perhaps very specific product units, like think companies like SAP or Microsoft. One of the quick wins that we've had recently, because this is also a relatively new practice for us, is as we're productizing this for our customers, we also started using the same type of data intelligence. Our data scientist has an econometrics background, which allowed us to analyze some of our data to understand why our customers are churning. So very small data set, using the right algorithms to identify some of those signals, which has actually been really interesting.
Great. Brandon, why don't we start with you? What are some of the biggest trends you're seeing in data science today?
I think the biggest one, and we've seen this over the last few years, and it's really about the application of data science. For a long time there was a lot of movement towards data's valuable, and I think we've come a long way in realizing that that's not really true. Data on its own isn't valuable. It's the insight that you're able to get from that data, and even that is only really valuable if you can action it. So it's the end result that is important. And I think that more and more we're seeing people focusing on what the result is they're trying to accomplish with their data and their data analytics and their outcome from all of the machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence, whatever they're building. It's the outcome that is important. I think that's the biggest trend that we're seeing kind of over the last few years is really that focus on the action, as opposed to just, we have data, we should do something with it, we should build all these reports, we should look at historical data, and I think people have finally started to come around that that's not really valuable anymore, or it was never valuable in the first place, but now we're really seeing the action being kind of the first thing that people are driving, and they're using the analytics, machine learning tools to drive that and to add that value, but it's not just using the the data for the sake of playing with data. It's really with a goal in mind. And I think that's kind of the key enabler that's driving a lot of the use of the new technologies that are coming out now. And I think that's kind of the thing that gets me the most excited, is we're seeing some of the real value coming out of this stuff now.
Got it. Any of you want to add anything to that?
That's pretty good. The only other trend that I would say is more on the there's obviously a bandwagon effect that's happening here with AI, right? And everyone's kind of jumping onto it. So I think that's great. I've never seen, I've been in tech not that long, but it's been a good decade now. I've never seen a trend become table stakes so quickly. So now it's no longer about, being able to say, oh, we're AI driven, therefore we're winning. It's, if you are not at least starting to bring an intelligence component to your business, then you are already behind. And that happened very quickly.
So a common misconception is that all data is created equally. And what we're seeing a lot within some of the ventures that we're talking to at Omer's Ventures is the data doesn't come clean. There's a lot of work that you need to do to clean it up. Can you guys share any stories about how the data looks and how much work is needed from the data science team or from someone else on the team to kind of clean that data to actually get an apples to apples comparison to actually gain some insight out of it?
Yeah, I could take a start on that one. We work with e-commerce data, which at first glance seems like it should be pretty straightforward because there's products, there's orders, there's customers. But every different platform, every different site manages those things in completely different ways. A product category or an option for whether you're buying a large blue shirt or a small green shirt on Shopify or BigCommerce or any one of a zillion different Magento versions is completely different. So in order to for us to really use a platform to analyze all that data, it's a huge project to kind of consolidate all the different data models and all the different e-commerce platforms into one way of viewing products and trying to find a way to do that works across every e-commerce platform out there was certainly challenging, but that was what enabled us to do a lot of the work that we do.
Yes, similar. I mean, data blending is a huge challenge, and so even less complex things, just the way that different systems handle times and dates and revenue and customers and all of those different things. So just making sure that you're spending time up front to understand how each of the data sources treat those different things, and then you can blend them effectively, and then just obviously looking for really spending time with the data set to really understand any anomalies, outliers, things that you want to remove from the data set to make sure that you're working with the most accurate information.
Gotcha. So machine learning and AI have become some of the hottest topics right now in tech. We're seeing a lot of companies that had a .com and then all of a sudden they changed it to .ai, and now they're raising a round of financing because now they're an AI company. Yoav, why don't we start with you? Do you believe that machine learning and AI is just hype, or is it an actual reality we're stepping into?
Well, we actually just bought the domain uberflip.ai, so our valuation at least tripled. I think it's a really interesting time because the amount of energy that had to go into the algorithms of machine learning, natural language processing, it's a lot of it is open source now. It's no longer the 20 PhDs in a room that have to figure out how to make the stuff work. It's there now. It's about actually leveraging it. It's about putting it into practice. And I think there's obviously a lot of hype around it, but I think the biggest issue is that a lot of companies right now are positioning themselves as AI first, and as a result, they think that's enough to win. Where what I've seen really rapidly happen is, you can bring all of these technologies and all these techniques into an existing business very effectively. We saw Salesforce launch Einstein recently, and it's going to augment everything that they're doing. And I've heard of companies like, oh, we're HubSpot, but we're AI first. Well, HubSpot just bought a machine learning company like this week. They will bring it into their fold. So I think that's the first misconception that if we're AI first, then we have a platform that's going to allow us to take off. Where really it's really the blend and how you're going to bring that into your fold.
Alyssa, Brandon, do you want to add on to that, or go ahead?
I was just going to say, for us looking at getting into the space, oftentimes, we're so excited at RateHub around the larger challenges and the machine learning opportunities. But the first step for us is just making sure that we have the resources in place, all of our data sources coming together, making sure that we understand all of our conversion metrics, getting a great lay of the land, getting everybody on the team using and accessing the data, and then almost, increasing our skill set and our chops to take on some of the bigger challenges. So for people, whether you're running a company, working at a company, and you're interested in this stuff, there's things that you can do first to get yourselves ready to go after some of the really big opportunities, because it can be intimidating when you're looking at this and wondering how to start.
Yeah, for sure. Just to add on to that, I think your point about sort of making it a data-first culture is got to be a key thing for anybody, and especially for your own internal use, but also if you're building something on behalf of your customers, and how you convey that to them is huge. But to add on to Yoav's point, there are a few companies and areas where kind of the AI first mindset makes sense. If we get into there's guys who are doing some fantastic stuff around self-driving cars, or the AI around like medical diagnosis systems, like those are built to be kind of AI first systems, and has to be, the intelligence is 20 PhDs in a room making that work. But for the vast majority, it's not just we're going to stick AI onto blank. That doesn't work, and we've seen that fail a bunch of times. But there are areas where AI needs to be sort of a core central piece, and just knowing what the difference is, I think, is important.
Got it. So when a lot of times when people think about AI, they think about algorithms, and you see in the news, you see in TechCrunch that these companies are being bought for their really cool algorithms, very, very new and influential within what they're trying to do. But when you go underneath the hood of AI, you kind of notice that, a lot of this stuff is open source. So Brandon, my question to you is, AI and machine learning can provide some differentiation. Do you believe in building algorithms in-house or outsourcing it to existing third-party products?
I think there's kind of a couple of ways to look at that, and part of it is the algorithm itself. As we've said, there are tons of great open source tools out there for doing machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing. Don't reinvent the wheel unless you're trying to be a better natural language processing engine. Don't build that. Use the ones that are out there, and that's very much the approach that we've taken. Is we're not trying to reinvent the underlying algorithms around machine learning. We're trying to find good ways to use them and apply them to a specific problem, and knowing what the outcome of that is and how to interpret it and how to turn it into something that is actionable is the part that adds value for most companies. There are certainly cases where the state of the art around machine learning and deep learning isn't there for particular applications, and we do need to expand it. But for the most part, for most use cases, for most businesses that are not kind of pure analytics data plays, I think the existing tool set out there enables us to move so much faster by just using what's out there rather than trying to do it ourselves.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's about not reinventing the wheel, and I think the competitive advantage is, if you think about all these open source algorithms that exist, they're really the ingredients. And the salad that we make, sorry for the bad analogy, is really our competitive advantage, right? It's how we blend those things together in a way that's very, almost proprietary. And for that reason, I think it's absolutely critical to have that in-house. No one on the outside is going to know the nuances of your business to know why you should, mix the salad or put enough dressing. So I think that is what we're going to see. That is, and there's going to be standalone products that can be machine learning based, like recommendation engines actually are one where you can have a standalone business, but it's the combination that brings that into the companies that will give them a competitive advantage over the competitors that maybe don't have as good a salad.
So we agree that right now AI and machine learning provides a competitive advantage. The data science team provides a competitive advantage, but we're seeing more and more of startups and more established companies jumping into the AI space. Do you think it becomes table stakes where you have to have AI to compete in machine learning and data science? And when do you think that is? Alyssa, why don't we start with you?
I mean, have to have it is a pretty bold statement. I think it really depends on the industry. And I think a lot of it, too, is the stage of company. So as I mentioned, a few things happen in our business that it has now become table stakes. So a lot more users and just a lot more data. So now there's actually data to play with and to draw insights from. And then also increased complexity. So data existing across a number of different systems. Not full control over the customer. So customer, we're finding the customer on our site, they're converting off of our site and in systems and interacting with data and people that we have less control over. And so that has, made it more relevant. If we look at our big competitors in the US, like Credit Karma and NerdWallet, we're starting to see really huge data science teams. And so that's a good indicator for us. And then if I look at the competitors within Canada, so our direct competitors would be Rate Supermarket, Lowest Rates. We haven't seen big data teams. And so I think it's an opportunity for us to now, it will serve as a competitive advantage the quicker that we're able to adopt and invest in it.
Yeah, I think the point you made about scale is perfect, because we have 20,000, almost 21,000 retailers now connected to our platform. We have one customer success person. We wouldn't be able to operate what we do at scale if there was any kind of human being involved in that. So, it has to be automated. It has to be able to be done by a machine in order for it to work at all. And so, we see that. I think you don't have to have AI as part of your platform, but you have to have a story around AI, machine learning, and what you're going to do with it, and whether or not it's a competitive differentiator at each stage of the journey. If it's something that, if you guys had focused on that first before you got users and all the rest of the content you have, it wouldn't work, right? But, for us, without it, we would just be another way to create Facebook ads, which, isn't great. So we needed it right from the start in order to be able to drive a higher return on ad spend for our customers than they were able to get anywhere else.
Yeah, I think the point that you're getting at, and it was going to be my point as well, is that it is a competitive advantage at this point. And we're in the marketing tech space. You've all seen the diagram with 5,000 solutions on there. Every one of those is now figuring out how to be AI, right? Because it is a competitive advantage. It makes sense. So I think it is table stakes at this point.
Gotcha. Question from the audience: how many people do you have in your data analytics teams?
0. Actively looking for one. It's an interesting question because we've really been going back and forth internally. Do we hire someone at the director level who has experience setting up various systems for us, but then maybe isn't as executional, so then who executes? Or do we hire someone at the analyst into senior analyst level that has more experience on the execution side, less on the setting up the frameworks and foundation? Where we're leaning to and where we ultimately got to is hiring someone at the senior digital analyst level, and then bringing in a consultant as required to help us really set up and lay the foundation, and going from there. So hopefully that's the right move. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say.
So our company currently is 8 people. So the data science end of things basically is myself, and then we have one who's more of I would say data engineer than data scientist, but that's sort of a quarter of the company is dedicated to that aspect of things. Historically, when we were early on building a lot of the guts of our platform, we also had another data science resource, which was kind of more along the lines of the junior person that you're talking about to do a lot of the execution of, we actually need a model to do X. Let's go and build it and figure out how we're going to put that together. So that was kind of, as we were starting out, there was a bit more resourcing on that. But now that it's kind of baked into the platform, it's there and it needs to be maintained. But there's not a lot of crazy new stuff we're doing right off the bat. So
yeah, so I had our data scientists, we have one. He started about a year ago, and I had some very strict requirements. I wanted to go senior. He's a PhD, and I wanted somebody with an engineering background. So because my view was, as great as somebody could be with the data, if we can't action it immediately and they have to go and train our engineering team, it's just going to take a very long time. So that ended up being a great move. Sinan's amazing. We were able to prototype things within weeks. He has helped augment basically our entire product management team, our engineering team. Everyone's in the fold now, and we are now going to hire our second data scientist as a result, because it's back to the belief that it has to be internal and you need somebody senior, because we were at a point where we wanted to actually acquire a small machine learning company, and we came really close to it, and then we realized that we just had no resources internally that could actually analyze the validity of their software, how good their algorithm was. So we took a step back and said, all right, we need that level of sophistication in-house, and they have to be senior.
Great. So one of the things that we did at Omer's Ventures recently was we took every single AI and machine learning acquisition made from 2014 up to year-to-date 2017. We read all the press releases, and we dug through. We looked at what were the reasons why these companies, the bigger acquisitions, were bought for what they were bought for. Like, why were they hundreds of millions when they had no revenue and they had a great team? And the 3 findings we found was, 1, they had access to proprietary data that nobody else had, so they could do things that nobody else could, either through their own customer data or through access to an exclusive agreement to get data. Second part was they had a lot of PhDs on staff that were machine learning experts. And lastly, some of those PhDs were taught by the 3 godfathers of AI from University of Alberta, UFT, and McGill. So with that said, recruitment is a huge issue within AI today. And if the key to data science is talent, then recruitment becomes even a bigger major focus. In your experiences, how have you seen the talent across Toronto or Canada versus the US?
We don't have a U.S. office, so I can't really say for the States, but one of the things that we do see that's a little bit different in the data science and machine learning side of things relative to some other kind of functional areas in Toronto is there is actually a great community and base here, largely because of the education system here. There are a lot of universities in Toronto and Canada in general that have focused heavily on machine learning AI in the last few years. And so, we're starting to see the results of that now, where there's a lot of people coming out of those programs with a lot of talent and have great backgrounds in engineering or physics or other disciplines that tie in well. And so I think, there's definitely a good hub here. And I think that's helped certainly. And we see that in it all the time in just the volume of startups and people doing cool things here.
Yeah, I think it's still early days. I don't think people are running into as big a crunch right now because we're not hiring data scientists the way we're hiring engineers, right? And so many engineers are coming out of computer science programs, and we have some of the best in the world, just within Ontario. But I think as a trend, we're probably going to see a lot more of those computer science students or other students going into PhDs because they now, the dollar signs are lighting up, right? So it's becoming this huge opportunity. So I think in 3 years from now, 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a lot more candidates, which will hopefully meet the demand.
Yeah, I've been impressed and been able to find, even people in my network that I went to university with, or friends that are in the field and have been connecting me with individuals. And so it's been easier than I've thought, but I have found the price points to be higher, a little bit higher than expected. So.
Yeah, for sure. And it also depends on whether you're trying to find a practitioner or a leader that's done it before. If you're trying to find somebody who's, been doing this for, 15, 20 years, that's run a team and has built up a practice like that, there's very few of those kind of people, but there are a lot of people with the skills to do the work.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because like 5-10 years ago, when you looked at AI and machine learning, there was about 100 people in the world that knew what they were doing. Now, like China pushes out 200,000 AI and machine learning graduates a year, which is crazy to think how far we're going to get in 5 to 10 years from now. Really hot question from the audience. Can you give us an idea of the scale or size of the data that you work with today, and how do you see this growing? Yoav, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I'm just looking for our PM in the room because you'll probably know the answer to that. Hey, Chris, how much data we got? We probably have like terabytes of actual data. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that continues to grow. I mean, we literally have an engine that siphons content from around the web. Like you can connect a Twitter list and import all of it. So for not for the sake of reproducing Twitter, but we have that constantly growing. Every customer that's coming on is bringing on a massive amount of data. Metrics is a big challenge for us. Even just data warehousing is a big challenge for us to begin with, and it's only getting bigger.
Yeah, for our side of things, we've got over 20,000 retailers on now. Each of those has tons of customers, products, orders. So I think we're up to about 65 million unique customer profiles with all of their order history, page views, the works. So it becomes a fairly significant volume of data, and we've get tons of new stores added every day. And so with each new store comes another chunk of new customers, products, and orders as well. So it's growing rapidly for sure.
Another hot question from the audience: how much attention do you pay to data security and protecting the data you're working with? And I think that's an important one because you're capturing all this data and you're taking all this responsibility of customer data and information that the customers have. How do you ensure that it's secure?
We probably have the most sensitive data of all of it, so I'll start. So because we deal with e-commerce, we get people's names, addresses, email addresses, and lots of PII. So we take data very seriously. My co-founder used to run VeriSign in Canada, so our background is very much focused on security and privacy of data. So we take great pains to make sure that the data is controlled all the way through the whole pipeline, but also is only able to be accessed by a particular store. So we don't share data between stores. We don't market one store's customers with another store's products. So it's all very tightly controlled in terms of who can access it and who can use it for what is the other kind of main thing that is a big component of what we do. So we don't deal with any payment information, which is nice, but we do deal with lots of other data around commerce, and so security is paramount, and we do go to fairly significant lengths to make sure that it's tightly controlled and access to it is only to the people who are really supposed to be doing something with it.
Yeah, we took a very unique approach to stay as far away as possible from personally identifiable information. So we really handle all of, we do a lot of lead gen. People are entering their emails, their information, their job titles, all that. We pass that straight through to marketing automation systems. But at the same time, we are very focused on security right now. We're going through a SOC 2 compliance. I don't know if either of you have to deal with that. So we're taking it very seriously.
Alyssa, how about you?
Similar. So we pass a lot of our information through to third-party CRMs. We're not collecting payment information, but it's become an increasing, as we're diving deeper into the mortgage vertical and starting to take more information from our customers, it's become important to us, and our customers are demanding it as well. So it's something that we're getting more and more users asking about, and so really, investing in that area.
Gotcha. How do you balance the art of human intuition and science of machine learning when making actionable decisions using data science?
I have a good story on that one. So we look at data around various events that are relevant for commerce, and every year we do analysis of all the Black Friday and holiday shopping is kind of a huge deal for us. And so it's always interesting to see the patterns around when people shop, how much they're shopping for, whether or not discounts are important, and so we've spoken at other e-com meetups and things with all kinds of details. I could go on for hours about this, but the one thing that we're always surprised at is we always kind of check our intuition before we start and say, like, all right, what do we think this is going to come out with? And then we go through all the analysis, and 9 times out of 10 we're completely wrong. But every once in a while, some of our assumptions are validated. But there's some really neat patterns around shopping behavior that kind of go counter to what you would think. And specifically around the Black Friday holiday season is just a fascinating exercise to go through and look at when people shop and the psychology of Black Friday shopping and when sales start and how that has changed year over year for the last few years has been a really interesting exercise. If anyone's curious, we can talk about it in more detail afterwards.
Yeah, I want to know.
I just want to give you props because you're clearly the fastest thinker on this panel. I just have to come up with the stories first. For us, we deal with marketers, and marketers are very much, and really what we're offering them is control. So when it comes to having a machine take over to make decisions, it's kind of a touchy subject. The way we've looked at it is, in our world, the marketers are really the artists who are making, human based decisions. And the machines are really saying, I don't, there's no humans involved here. We're just looking at signals. So what we're really trying to do is blend those two concepts together. It's that middle ground that I think wins, is part of that terrible salad analogy, and a lot of AI comes down to training, right? Is like how well are you training the machine to know? And I think that's a continuous process. And I think the idea that, if we just plug in an algorithm, it's gonna continuously learn on its own and take over the world is not very accurate. I think it's constantly going to be this blend of having the human component manipulate and get better and better with art and science.
And Alyssa, RateHub.ca, you have over 300,000 monthly users, which is fantastic. How do you? And I know a lot of times you look at the data and you know exactly what customers you can actually sell to versus which ones will probably bounce off because of all the data science that you have in the background. How do you kind of give that customer experience without just looking at the data alone and just provide that service and that great UX that RateHub.ca has?
It's a great question. So I think that, it's supplementing the data-driven decisions with some of the qualitative. And so really, making sure that you're running regular user testing groups, getting something that we realized at RateHub is we have all of these customers, but we don't interact with them enough offline to really get them into our offices and understand, what's driving their decisions, what's driving their emotions, where are they making these personal finance decisions, where are they researching this information. And so getting into a regular practice of still connecting with your customers, taking it offline and really understanding some of the bigger picture things. But then another thing that is a huge priority for us is that we've gotten really good at finding, so if someone's searching for best mortgage rates, it's a really high intent search. They get to our site and we're really great at converting them. But we need to do a lot more lead nurturing because for example, our traffic increased 50% year over year, but we didn't see nearly the same hike in conversions. And we're getting a lot of people at different stages in the buying process. And so that's another thing that we need to really leverage data for, to understand how can we turn more of these colder interactions into connections and leads with their customers.
Gotcha. Question from the audience. Sounds like a CTO type question. So Brandon, I'm going to refer this to you, and Yoav and Alyssa, you guys can jump in. What processes or infrastructure do you run on in-house systems, and how are you leveraging cloud services to grow?
Well, I mean, everything is cloud now. We don't actually own any hardware other than our laptops, but we have sort of a mix of infrastructure. We have a partner locally for keep a lot of our data in Toronto, so we work with a local company that handles a lot of our DevOps and hosting. But then we also use AWS for a ton of stuff as well. And so it just depends on kind of putting the right thing in the right place. Certain things we want more control over, other things we need the scale that we can't get from kind of doing our own stuff. So that AWS is a better choice for some of that. But in terms of the pipeline, there's a little bit of everything. We have stuff on site tracking user behavior. We have stuff coming through the back end and just a fire hose of data coming from Magento, BigCommerce, and Shopify. So there's a lot of stuff dealing with that as well. So that's kind of the data pipeline that we're looking for on the ingestion side of things. And then there's a bunch of other stuff downstream for analyzing all of that. Hope that answers the question.
I was curious what company you use for DevOps and hosting.
We're with VM Farms. We're a happy VM Farms customer, so I fully endorse them if anybody's looking for a local company that does stuff here.
Us too.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been great.
One of the questions, it's a hot question, it's a tough question to answer, but specifically, what salaries must you pay to acquire a senior PhD level data scientist and or a data scientist engineer practitioner in general? What are you looking at? I mean, it's a very competitive space. Everyone's getting picked up really quickly. You're competing against the Shopifys, the Googles, the Facebooks that just lure students out of these universities with high wages and pull them into these large organizations with great opportunities. How do you lure them away, and how much do you have to pay to kind of get them in?
I haven't actually hired a PhD in a long time, so our staff has been fairly stable. So my data is all a little bit out of date in terms of what's currently going on in the market. So
I won't talk about the salary because I actually don't think the salary is relevant because Google's always going to pay more for basically every role. It's about creating an attractive opportunity. If you're going to a large organization, you're working on probably a much larger scale problem that you're going to be working at Uberflip. But in terms of ownership, in terms of control, in terms of the ability to explore, is probably going to be limited. So, our data scientist, what sold him was the opportunity to come and really start the practice. In a marketing organization. He has an economics background. The understanding people's behaviors and all that was really interesting to him. So I think it was really more about how we position the opportunity than what we were willing to pay.
Yeah, I can definitely echo that. I've found in all of my interviews, people in this industry are especially motivated by the problem and how interested they are in the problem and how challenging it will be for them. So really clearly articulating what that challenge is going to be, how you're going to support them with resources in the organization, and really just get them excited about what it is you're trying to do.
And also ping pong tables.
Yeah, I'm terrible at ping pong, but the other one just is around the data they're going to be working with. Like obviously, the problem can be interesting, but if they don't have any tools to solve it, then that's going to be a less interesting problem. So either giving them the ability to collect the data they need, or if you already have data in-house, conveying that as part of the kind of value proposition for the role is huge.
Brandon, I'm going to put you on the spot because there's a question directly to you. Do you use differential data security to protect data so you're able to use all the data for all customers?
I'll actually take that one.
Not currently. A lot of the way that we structure things now is data is used for individual customers, and we have essentially a model training factory that goes through and does it for each individual customer. But we're not currently doing anything across customers. We're looking at things rolled up kind of to the store level as a way to aggregate it and look at patterns across stores, but we're not like tracking an individual person across stores. That's not something that we're currently doing, but it is definitely on the roadmap.
Big question. What is the number one challenge you're facing, either on the data science side or as a company as a whole, in 2017 right now? Putting you on the spot, I know.
Well, the easy answer is always, hiring and finding great talent, right? But specific to data science, what we're finding right now is how can we take everything that we're learning, which is really just been extremely eye-opening, and productizing it as quickly as possible to capture the market. So right now I think there is a bit of an AI race, so to speak, and it's probably happening across industry. I think that's probably our biggest challenge right now.
Yeah, I just echo that. I think the one for us is just we have tons of data, we have tons of smart people, we have the ability to do all kinds of neat stuff with it, but how do we put that into something that our customers can use? They're not data analysts, they don't see that as the thing that they're buying. They want growth for their business, and how do we translate all of this intelligence that we have into something that is a dollar sign for them? And no, they don't. That's the biggest challenge for us.
A biggest challenge for us on the data side, as I've alluded to, is just getting that initial setup right, and figuring out who the right person is to hire. And anytime you're bringing someone on to lead an initiative, it's even that much more important to get it right, because they have such influence and impact on the outcome. In terms of challenge facing the overall organization, I'd say it's as we've been continuing to grow, complexity is increasing a ton. And in order to hit all of our growth targets, there's so much going on. And so how do you balance doing enough so that you hit growth while also maintaining some level of focus so that things actually get done well, and you're laying the right foundation for the next 3 to 5 years of growth. So lots going on.
Great answers. So each of you have co-founded your companies for a number of years now. Do you find more and more as time passes by that data is becoming more and more of a currency? As in the value of data and the value of the amount of data that you gather becomes more and more important as your company keeps evolving?
I think for us, along with some of the stuff that Yoav was saying earlier, it's kind of table stakes now, especially at the stage we're at. If we didn't have this number of stores on the platform that we had, we wouldn't be considered successful. So I think it's just sort of a check mark as opposed to a currency. If you don't have data, you're not tracking data, you're just doing something wrong. It's not a matter of volume, I don't think, as a currency.
It's more about, you've been saying this about enabling that data, even as things like, you could do this industry averages, right? Being able to have enough data across industries that will actually benefit one of your customers to know how they're tracking. That's not really, I don't know, that's necessarily data science, it's more just analytics. But that is, the leverage that you have when you have a lot of data. I think that's always kind of existed.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've realized, is that data can now, and on the analytics side, become a revenue stream for us, because we're working with so many of the financial institutions and the smaller credit unions and brokers, and we have so many users visiting our sites. We actually have data that can help banks decide pricing strategy, and if they drop their rate by 5 basis points, how much will that increase the interest in their product? And so really starting to harness that data so that we can turn it into a big revenue source.
Great. We have 2 minutes remaining. So in this audience, we have entrepreneurs, tech enthusiasts, technologists. What are some tips that you can give them in terms of data science, in terms of running a successful company that they can take back with them and hold on to? Yoav, why don't we start with you? I'll put you on the spot.
Sure. Again, my philosophy was always start with somebody that can really bring the practice into the entire organization. I don't think this is something you can start with from a junior position. You have to start with maybe not a PhD, but somebody with enough experience and background in this. and hopefully with some engineering abilities to actually productize and be able to run some of those, those very complex queries and actually show you what it produces, because getting this kind of stuff off the ground is just really difficult. And if you have to include a bunch of people at the same time to get it off the ground, you're just making it a lot harder on yourself. So I would just start with somebody senior and, swallow the pill and just, start there.
Yeah, for sure. And just making it part of the organization. Like, you have to have somebody leading it, but it can't just be that person. It has to be something that the whole team buys into as a focus for what you're doing. Because you've got to do the work to actually build the models and understand the data. And, you need that guy to do that thing. But, if the whole company isn't behind using the output of all of that, then it just sort of sits there. That's not a great thing. So you need to be able to focus on that as a part of your culture.
I think it's also important to decide how core data intelligence is to your competitive advantage and to being successful. For us, we're looking at adding it for the first time, and this will be the end of our 8th year. It is something important, and maybe we could have started in our 6th or our 7th, but starting too early would have been focusing on the wrong things. So deciding quickly whether it is core to your business, because it may be, but if it's not, it's okay not to do everything all at once, because when you're starting, limited resources are such a thing. You really need to focus and become the best at one thing.
Great. Thank you for the insights. Thank you for all the knowledge that you've given us. Let's get a round of applause for our panelists.